Leave your ego at the door and get ready to be raw. This is Strength to Overcome, where real men find their strength in weakness. I'm Ryan here with my co-host Matt. This is episode 31. We're excited to be back with you. We've got a special guest on the episode today. Chad Dunn is with us. He's the founder, the owner of Move Human Performance in Chandler, Arizona. Also author of Mind Over Virtually Everything, 10 Codes to Transform Your Life, which just recently released. And we're excited to jump into that. Chad, it's great to have you on, brother.
Ryan, Matt, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Tell us a little bit about your gym and your facility there in Arizona first, and let's give the folks a view, because everybody knows at this point that Matt and I used to own gyms and we were in the whole fitness space. So first things first, tell us a little bit about your facility there and what you've got going on.
Yeah, so 2017, I opened up Move Human Performance Center, and really what it is, it's a sanctuary to bridge the gap from the physical to the mental, emotional side of people. I say performance. So that also includes athletes and just your normal, average, everyday Joe. So we train a lot of different people. We train athletes. We train people that are overcoming catastrophic burns. I've got a couple of paralysis or paralyzed people that have some spinal cord. And then we have your normal fitness. For people that want to get better, that's what our gym is, So 2017, I opened it up with my wife, Jackie, and we've expanded in the meantime. We survived COVID, right? Because COVID came in 2020. And now we've opened up different services where we have physical therapy inside of there. We have a cryotherapy chamber for recovery. We do all the fitness, and then we do all the sports performance. So it's a one-stop where we can take you from A to Z.
Wow, that's awesome. It sounds kind of like a model that I was considering at one point back in the day, where you've got different modalities under the same roof. And it's great to hear that you survived COVID and got through all that, because that was a crazy time. I was in the gym world at the time as well. So tell us a little bit about kind of your role and what you do in the gym now. Are you training people still actively?
Yeah, I still train people. We've got a good team. We've got 8 of us employees out there. My youngest one is my grandson. He just started with us. He's 5 months old. So we're already giving him a job. And his job is to be around good people so we can build his morale and build his energy, So we've got a good team. What I tell people is I opened up Move in 2017. I knew I was always going to have physical therapy. But again, I'm not a therapist. So I've got certifications to the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I've had all my stuff over the years. A lot of my trouble led me to not go into PT school. I was too busy partying at the time. And so I did not finish school and take the PT route. But I knew there was a way that I could do it, and that's by hiring physical therapists, right? So I call myself now the Uber to physical therapy. I'm a non-provider, or my wife and I were non-provider owners of physical therapy clinic. So we have a good team. They treat the patients. My buddy Kane and I, who's a sports performance guy, graduated from ASU with kinesiology. He's my right-hand man. So we've got 2 trainers. We've got 2 therapists. We've got a PTA. And then also we have my wife who does the medical billing. And then we have a front desk, my daughter-in-law, who does all the scheduling. So it's still family. We're small business. But again, we treat a lot of the who's who in the Valley of Arizona.
Wow, that's pretty
incredible.
cool. I feel like I could pick your brain for like a couple hours on just the gym side of things. But let's bring in Matt and see what your thoughts are, Matt. Is that kind of a model that you ever considered in your world?
It's funny. When I had my studio, there were about 4 or 5 other office areas up and beside 180. You remember that, Ryan? And there was a time there where I ended up going upstairs and looking around and saying, right, could I really put in different businesses that are going to help so that you could literally come to my gym and, Chad, my place was called 180 Fitness, turn your life around. And what I wanted to do was have not just the fitness side, but I wanted the mental side. I wanted the rehabilitative side. I wanted all of the nutrition side and even the financial sector, right? And I wanted to be able to have everything, put together. So my question to you would be, what would be the next thing you'd add to your practice? Because it sounds to me like you're doing something Ryan and I have both thought about and maybe never pulled the trigger on or just didn't know how to, but you've actually pulled it off. So first of all, congratulations on doing that. But what's next for you? And then I want to go all the way back and hear the backstory on how this came about next.
Sure. Yeah, so and for me, I always have a goal. And writing this book, this is just a mean step. Obviously surviving COVID or making the business run. We're almost at 10 years. We're at 9 years. We'll be coming up on 9 years in May. So we're looking for that 10-year mark, which again, that's a big milestone for small businesses. But I got to get bigger. I got to get bigger. So we went from 2,700 square feet. Right now we're at 5,400 square feet. I want to double that and bring that to about 12,000 square feet, have my own facility. I want to put a pool in there. I'm going to put a sand pit in there so you could do some indoor sand training with it as well. And then just continue to grow the service, add more employees and make it a private. Again, the corporations, the corporate sectors are always trying to take over, but the private sector can always win, especially when we deal with insurances right now. It is a pain in the ass, just because they don't want to pay, the reimbursements are down. And so by doing that, as a personal trainer, you can only see one person an hour. So if you wanted to work 12 hours a day without a lunch, the maximum you can see is 12 people. It's a long day. 12-hour days are very long. And so we opened up the group model and then started to treat patients. So right now we see anywhere between 40 to 60 patients a day, and we train probably 40 to 50 people a day, sessions. So I got to get a bigger facility. We want to continue to grow.
That's awesome. I know Ryan's over there nodding like a madman. For those that are listening on the podcast, they can't see it, but he's chomping at the bit right here. As a previous dual gym owner, you're starting to think about it again, Ryan. I can see those wheels
Nice.
are turning, man. Am I
Yeah,
right?
get the juices flowing again for all that. And Chad, have you found a way to break into in terms of insurance for personal training, or is that just on the physical therapy side of things that you're running insurance?
You know, they're what used to be a way back in the day, because again, if they came in with a script and you can go through and bill it. But again, the insurances have cracked down a lot. So the training, I know a lot of people have done it where they've come in and they could take it, but you have to have a provider that insures it. I could have people come in and train underneath their insurance with my providers. But again, that's insurance fraud. You can't do that. Right.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
I know a lot of people that have a model like that. And I've been approached with a model such as, but then again, spending time in federal prison, that's something that I'm not going to touch. Nope. The insurance companies, the insurance companies always win. So, we have cash prices. And what we're trying to do really is we're trying to go to all cash prices and eliminate insurances completely, just because the reimbursements have gone down so low. They don't want to pay for the services that are at hand. For me to hire a physical therapist, their salary is almost just as much as a reimbursement one session. So now you have to see 40 more people a day just to be able to pay for it. And we're not trying to get busier as in terms of volume. Obviously we want to make sure that we provide a quality of care. So there's a certain limitations, a lot of these therapy places right now, it's come in, let me give you a paper to go do at home. Let me work on you, do some cupping or do some dry needling to get the heck out of here. Let me bill, because they're only going to get $65 for it all. Where we still
Yeah.
make sure we take patient care. And that's one of the things is that because we do care, we're a little slower. So we have to find the other entities or ancillary incomes to bring in, such as the personal training, such as mental therapy, our cryotherapy. Those are just other ancillary revenue sources that come in.
Yeah, if I was nearby, I'd come down and check you out. Obviously, I've got a lot of the last 7 months is a bit of a mess there, so we won't drag my story there back into this episode. But I'm excited to hear that places like what I had and even what Ryan had, and now what you've got, still exist. Where that mum pop feel where people really come in, they get to know each other, they get to know the other members or clients, and create that accountability and that friendship. Right? I think that if we've all been in this long enough, which we have, you'll understand the concept of everyone's got something that they're going through, and we're not just talking the physical side, we're talking the mental side. And I think that there's
Huge.
some real benefit and blessing from belonging to a place where, yes, you know how to work out and you could do it on your own, but you don't quite get that level of effort out of doing it on your own. I noticed your shirt before we started. Could you just sort of stand up a little bit? I want to make sure I catch that on here.
Yeah.
But for those that are listening and can't see, it says nobody cares, work harder. And
No one cares.
it's kind of cool for us to sort of see that, because I've been through a bicep tear and rehabbing a frozen shoulder now, and Ryan's coming back from neck surgery. So, we've been in places where we could quite easily say, man, it's tough. I can't get back in there. It's hard work. So what have you found worked for you to be able to get the accountability factor up and build that camaraderie between your clients and your members?
everything's synergistic. So when everybody comes in, whether it be a patient or if somebody wanting to lose weight or if it's an athlete, obviously everybody feeds off the professional athlete. So when you see somebody in training for the NFL, you see somebody training for the NBA, and they could be a high school kid, or they could actually currently be training or getting ready to play in the league, or are currently playing in the league. When you get these people come in, that motivates the younger kids. It shows them the blueprint is there for them to follow this, because we've done it. Everyone says, Chad, how do you do all these things? And it's very simple for me, is that I've done it. I'm an outcome-based guy. Yes, there's research. We have force plates now. Everything's quantitative data. Everything's being measured. We can measure the watts. We can measure the speed of the lifts. We can measure all that stuff. But there's one thing that we really don't measure anymore, and that's your heart, and that's your mental capacity. Right? We have all these strength coaches that are out there. We have stretching coaches. I have sports performance coaches. I have skills coaches for whatever sport it might be. And so these kids that are coming out right now, they're very talented. And so when we put that together, we see everybody else coming back from a burn. I've got a guy that was on fire for 2.5 minutes. When he sees these athletes doing it, next thing you know, he's like, okay, I got to do that. Or vice versa. When he's over here struggling to get his knee around on the bike because the skin's stretching, and we're taking things for granted when we're able bodies. We look and we think, well, nobody cares, work harder. It could be my paralyzed guy that's standing up and he takes a couple steps and falls down. I had that before. And it's not how many times you get back up, it's how many times, or how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up. We see that daily. And so when you put all these people in a good environment, which is again, all the four walls, that's what it is. It's about creating a great environment. And when you talk about people, or when people talk about move, they say it's the vibe. The first thing they say is the vibe, because as soon as you walk in the door, we have a thing on our wall that says, check your feelings in at the door. We're not here for your feelings. We're here to make you a better person. And we're going to do that by being real and telling you what it is. Because again, you can't bullshit yourself when you see somebody else on the other side working harder than you with an injury or some type of a complication that's a lot worse than what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's good
that's so
stuff.
true, Ryan. I'm sure you've had some clients, Ryan, like I have, right? Where you're actually pushing them through some stuff, thinking, my goodness, they're training harder than me, and they've got every reason to, like you said, Chad, complain or find a reason to even not even be in the building, let alone training half-assed. So, walk us through the background on this. I want to hear about how you got into there, because we're talking about 2017, which is, like you said, coming up on the 9-year anniversary. So, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
But walk me through the decades before that got you to the point where this thing opened up. How far back can you take us?
Well, you said about it earlier. You talked about the mental side of everything, and I knew as a former athlete, and getting hurt, I went to therapy and I knew this is what I wanted to do. This was something again, the healthcare system is because I care about health. And it's really come to find out that now, 30 years later, since I've been doing this, it's really the mental health that I care about. The physical health, obviously partying comes along with it, drinking, we're out having a good time. People could be doing drugs or whatever. But again, they go and work out. I see it all day long. The kids that go work out in the gym all day long, and then the next thing you know, they're out partying on the weekend. Again, are they trying to better their health, or are they just trying to look good? So, now my 30 years later, it's not really about the physical side. It's really about the mental side of it all. The physical capacity is going to come around. When I got into this, I thought for sure I could get everybody to lose weight. 220 minus your age, your maximum heart rate. Let's work at that 60 to 75% of it. Let's burn all this fat. And here we are months later, and not one of them lost any weight. And I found out, like, man, I don't eat for you guys. I don't go home and make those disciplined or those choices that you guys have to make, So I'm giving it everything I can as your trainer, as your health coach, as your life coach. But then again, you're not giving me everything back. And that's what I saw a lot when I started going. So I didn't really like the fitness side of it all. So I went more towards getting into the exercise science side of it all. I got a job with a physical therapy clinic, doing more of the exercise science, helping knee recoveries, a lot of ACL injuries, a lot of shoulder injuries. I worked with a company called Arizona Sports Physical Therapy. I worked for them for a little bit. Branched off to Rehab Plus, which I worked for basically 24 years. I worked with these guys. We did a lot of sports performance, NFL combine, so we did a lot of professional sports. And so it took just the initial physical therapy into the sports field. And then working with these people at Rehab Plus, Warren, these guys, just great people, just great people. I was very fortunate to have some good mentors around me. But at the same time, Mentally, I wasn't locked in. I was out partying. I was out doing stuff. I went through a tough time in the late 1990s, early 2000s. We didn't know what was going to happen in 2000. We thought the world was going to shut down, right? 2000, when everything clicked over, the world was going to shut down. At that time, I was doing different things. I was in and out of the training, but it was more because of my personal choices. I started using drugs. I started partying. I started selling drugs. And then that led me to go into federal prison in 2005 to 2008, roughly. I got arrested in 2003. So my life was put on pause. But the first day I got out of prison, I went right back to work in the fitness industry with my guys at Rehab Plus. I worked there for another 10 years, I guess it was, maybe 9 years, and decided to open up my own so that I continue my own journey because I had a lot more give in me. I had a lot more that I wanted to give. And so here we are now as the CEO of Move Human Performance Center with my wife, Jackie.
That's incredible, Chad. I don't know if Ryan, if you had a glitch on your end, but there was a little breakup right when you said back in 2000 or 2003. I don't know for the
Yep,
audience, just in case it might have been me, but can you walk me through that couple of years just again in a little bit more detail because it broke up at least on my end. What was
sure,
going down at that time? And obviously you've made it out the other side, but
sure.
what was going on in your life at that time that it all went pear-shaped?
Well, exercise gives us a release of dopamine. We got serotonin. We have all of our good chemicals that makes us feel good. I was searching for that with drugs. I used to smoke crack. I was running the streets. I was selling crack. And I got 6 DUIs, which again I'm not proud of, but I got 6 DUIs just because I went partying, and that led me to do some crimes. And I got charged with money laundering in 2003. So in 2005, I was sentenced to 30 months in prison. So I had to go spend 28, 26 months in prison. And I got out in 2008. And that's when kind of my whole life started back over again. But again, it was the same thing as I wasn't looking at exercise. I would go smoke crack and then go play football games, right? We were playing full contact flag football out here. And it was still as a cover up. I always liked health. I've always maintained a good image. I've always stayed clean. Everything was good. But on the other side, I was chasing the dopamine, doing something I shouldn't have been doing.
So were you married and kids at that time, or is this all past?
No, nope. No, I was single. I was living in the strip clubs. I was living in the strip clubs at that time. When they say you're looking for love in all the wrong places, I wasn't looking for love. I was just in these places. But it was entertainment. Everything that I have done was entertainment purposes. And I was never the victim, not one time, never the victim. It was just that my behavior changed. And so that's one of the things I talk about now as a corrective behavioral change specialist. This is all about behavior. Exercise is all about behavior. Diet and weight loss is all about behavior. Drug use is all about behavior. And so that's when I really got a chance to look at it. When I spent my time in incarceration, it's about what am I going to do to change my behavior to be a better person. I tried the sports. I was an athlete. My self-identity changed. I went into being a partier. I went into selling drugs and having fun. My self-identity changed. I became a drug user. Now I have a new identity. I became a convicted felon. I was an inmate. Now again, as a business owner and somebody that's giving back to the community and helping others change their behavior, this is who I am now.
What sport were you playing? I don't know if you said that earlier, if it got broken up at the
Yeah,
introduction.
yeah, no. I grew up I was a BMX rider, so I like the thrill. I'm an extreme sports guy. I played football, I wrestled, I did all those, but to heart, I'm an extreme sports athlete, and with that comes no fear, living life on the edge, jumping out of airplanes with no parachute like Travis Pastrana, playing just the normal, the traditional games. Those are fun to me, but there's no risk, there's not a lot of risk, I like the high risk things, such as my lifestyle was.
So Ryan and I have talked a little bit about this in the past, finding that dopamine hit, or our personalities are drawn towards an addictive type of, you know, abuse. At what point did you either get help, seek help, or did you self-help? Walk us through that a little bit because, most people don't go in and then come back out and then change their community. It just doesn't happen.
They don't. But you just said right there, it's community. So I had to change my environment, right? And environment was not the places that I went. It was the people that I was with. Right. And so I let everybody know, in my book, I got chapter 3, you sleep with dogs, you wake up with fleas. Right. Everyone says it's the place that you're at is a bad environment. That's not true. Well, that's not true at all. It's the people. It's the people. So through the behavioral change, you have the 6 phases, for the trans-theoretical model is that you have the pre-contemplation, you have the contemplation phases or stages that are in there. You have the action, you have the preparation. So there's all different stages. And when I went to prison, basically my paper was wiped clean. I was with myself. Now, like you asked me earlier, did I have any kids or did I have a wife? I met my current wife while I was on pretrial release and before I went to prison. Right? She was my savior, and I say it to this day, and I've said it on every podcast, on any interview, is that she was my why. She was my why, and I knew that's what it was because here I was at like 35 years old. I was not a young kid. I was 35 years old when I got incarcerated. Right. This is time. This is time. But 31, I guess, when I got in trouble. So it's later in my life. So I spent my good 20s. There's a book that says your defining decade. What you do in your 20s is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. What I was in my 20s, I did not want to be for the rest of my life. I knew I had to change that decade. So when I got out in my 30s, I had a short period of time to change it. And I met Jackie. She dropped me off to self-surrender. People saying, and I say this before, why don't you stress? Because stressing is when your fiance, at that time was my girlfriend, she drops me off to self-surrender for 30 months. And I say, I hope I get to see you again. You don't know, you know. It could be that client that you're working with, and you got them in good shape, and everything's feeling good, and they say, "Hey, well, I'm going to move to the other side of the country," and you say, "Okay, I hope I see you again in the same shape or the same form." But there's an unknown in there. We don't know because now there's a separation. So I didn't know how that was going to be, but I knew I had a purpose, and my plan was to get out. She was a single mother. So I knew that I wanted to help her, and I knew that she was going to help me. So that was what it'd be for me. That was my why.
And was that right before you went in, you met her?
Yep, that was right before I went in when I met her. Yeah, she was a bartender, so I wasn't even supposed to be drinking. I wasn't supposed to be drinking, but I went to go meet my buddy so we could discuss all the shit that I've been through. I got arrested. 9 weeks later, I got released. I was flown on Con Air to Oklahoma to California. My case is out of Hawaii, so I ended up in court in Hawaii, and I did the Con Air, the federal marshals. I got the whole thing. We went and discussed about what the whole trip was like, the dark days, the nine weeks in hell, I called it. The feds coming in, the SWAT team coming to arrest you. So we talked about all that. And Jackie came up to our table. Again, I wasn't supposed to be drinking. And she said, "What can I get you?" My buddy started smooth talker, and he's the perfect icebreaker, perfect. So he started talking stuff, and she looked and she goes, "I don't give a shit. What can I get you?" And I told her that first day I saw her, I said, "I'm going to marry you. I'm going to marry you." Right? Just because she had a backbone, and I could tell she was real. And that's what this whole transformation is about. It's about being real. We talk about the podcast. It's about being real. You can't bullshit yourself. You have to have a goal and you have to go get it. So I knew what my purpose was that time. Now, being incarcerated, there was a period that her and I were not together because she is very real. And she's like, "I can't put my life on pause while you're there. I got kids. I got to take care of them." And I couldn't sit there and mentally think about what she's doing or what's going on. So at that point in time, we chose to not speak. Let's focus on what we have to do. Obviously, she had to focus on her and I had to focus on me until I got out. When we got out, we got back together.
You said earlier she was your why.
Yep.
What was it about her? You said she had a backbone and she was direct and all
Yep.
the rest of it, but there's a lot of people that cross your path that you could easily say that about. So what was it about her specifically, or the situation, or was it the hope of something different? What was the real why?
She has a personality that's just unbelievable. She's Italian from New Jersey. She don't put up with shit. Right. I used to date all the girls in Scottsdale and all the bimbos and everything else around here. That's not her. I needed somebody to put me in place. I need somebody to keep me in check. And she's the best person for it.
And what was it like when you were in there? You said you did 26 or 28 months, something like
Yep.
that?
Yeah, it was, it was a low security prison. Obviously, I had a money laundering crime, so it was low security. I went through all the major ones from the very beginning. This was an open yard. Now, the cool thing about prison is that for the federal system, we had weights. We had like a 10,000 square foot weight pile. Everybody in there lifting, everybody in there riding the bike, right? We had softball games. We had basketball games. It was great because, again, exercise is therapeutic. We all know that, right? It doesn't matter if you're an inmate or if you're a citizen on the streets. And I love to see it. So I met a couple of good guys in there that were very, very, very well into health, taking care of themselves. One of my buddies, Robbie, to this day is one of my best friends that I met in there. He did 19 and a half years. He got out 4 years ago. We still talk to each other. He's in my book, one of the strongest people that I met as well. So now I have a new support system when I'm in there. I had Jackie on the outside, and I got my homie Robbie on the inside. Just a very strong gentleman, and he was in there for some bigger crimes, doing some weed and cocaine stuff between Canada and the U.S. And so he got arrested, but he did 19 and a half years in there. He came out right now, 4 years. I think he's been out for about 4.5, 5 years. He's 11% owner in his company. Just another guy that came out and is not going to look back. And so there's a similarity with the mindset and the behavior. If you want to change your life, you got to change your behavior.
Did you just get lucky with the right people in there? Because again, the statistics probably point towards most of these guys getting out and repeating their events that got them in there in
Sure,
the first place, whether it's,
sure.
like you say, right, something that gets you 2 years or something that gets you 20 years. What do you attribute that to? Because once you're in there, you don't have to choose those guys. What made you choose those guys? What was the moment where you said, you know what, I got to hang out with those guys and not these guys? What happened in there?
Well, I had a plan when I went in there. I wanted to come out, and like I said, I had a plan and want to come and be a family man. I want to be with Jackie. I want to be with the kids, and it was time for me to make that change. And so when you go in there, I said before, I was not the victim. There's a lot of people that are in there that are victims. Fuck the system. I got put in here. I got framed. Somebody snitched on me. Whatever it was, me. I went in there. I did the crime. Let me do my time, and then let me start back over again. Again, that's the pessimistic people, and that's the optimistic people. I don't, the misery loves company. I'm not miserable, right? I had a fun time. I was never miserable, right? I was on the other side of it all. So I went to the entertainment. I went to the guys that were active. I went to the guys that were like, hey, let's go to work today. First day I was there, I got a job. I was working on the construction crew. We built the visitation center. Not a problem at all. Get me up early morning, and I can continue my days like it's a normal day on the outside or on the streets. And I got off work. I went to the weight pile and I started working. I started working out. I had Robbie. I had a buddy Lance that was in there. There was a bunch of us, Southsider guys that I had. We had a good people that were working out, but we went in there with a purpose. To go in there to lift weights, to better yourself, not to go in there and fuck around and do stupid shit like you see people in the gym currently do. I got my athletes that want to come in there with a purpose to play in the NBA or to play in the NFL. And then I have people that just come in there and exercise. There's a difference between training and exercising, right? We went in there to train. And what we did is we went in there to train to become stronger, right? And it wasn't just about the physical side of it all. It's the mental side. You're incarcerated. You're not going home. You get a lot of time to worry about what's going on the outsides, But one of the things is if you can take an hour and a half out and dedicate it to yourself and your mental well-being and change your behavior, now you can make it to that action phase. And when you get to the action phase, it's just about maintaining it. And so you can do that when you get released, when you open up the gates and you get to walk outside. Yeah, spending time for yourself, getting mentally strong, exercising, whatever it is, you have to spend time for yourself every day. And that lets you know that you're in the action phase. And when you're in the action phase, if you continue the action phase of changing your behavior, the maintenance phase comes next. You do that every day. I don't see how you can fall off.
Ryan, I see you just sitting there loving this because it's all gym related, but you and I have been through some stuff over the course of the last, couple of years, and we've talked about some of these divine appointments in some of these other episodes. Did you catch that he mentioned this random appointment of meeting Jackie? Is that right?
Mhm.
Your wife?
Yep.
At this random event that really shouldn't have taken place. And, it's almost like there's a lot of similarities between people that are coming out of something or have been through it or still in it, and these divine appointments that sort of shift the course. Did you pick up on that, Ryan? Or you got some thoughts on that? Because I know you and I have shared on that.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting to hear kind of how things fall in place when things seem to be going bad and things you're in a tough spot, but that just that random occurrence of meeting someone in a bar that you really shouldn't have been in the first place, and it kind of changed the course of your life, right?
And she doesn't drink. She's the sober bartender. So I say it all the time. I married the bartender that doesn't drink. And that's coming for somebody
Yeah.
that went there to go drink and like I said, done stupid shit. So it's like, this is crazy. So I never thought you could work in a bar or even go to the bar and not drink, and that was just a way of life because it's fun. You have sitting there. Shit, I could go to the bar now and sit there and have a water and just enjoy the environment, the vibe and everything else around. But that wasn't what I went there for before. You went there to have a couple cocktails and, to get a little sauce to maybe take the edge off from the stupid shit that life has given you, right? And you go in there and next thing you know, it leads to trouble. And so, I tell these kids nowadays, don't drink. The biggest thing about health and fitness is the first thing is don't drink. I'm not proud of it, but I can say one thing I've never done is I never smoked a cigarette in my life. Right. I smoked crack. I've smoked meth. I've smoked all these other things, but I've never smoked a cigarette. And they say, why is that? I say, because smoking a cigarette's bad for you. Right. No, it's all bad for you. It's all bad for you. Right. But again, it's your perception, and what you have. So when we have this perception, you have to be real. And when you be real, you have to know who your identity is. And so when I met Jackie and I got in there, I knew that's my own identity was, man, I'm going to be someone that can continue to take my message and everything that I've done and then give it back to people. I've got a strong lady on my side that's pushing me all the way. She's the one that's helped me get this book released. It was a birthday present for my 50th birthday. Right now, she's the person to help get me to get public speaking coming. She's done everything. But again, when you have that good teammate, and it goes back to having a teammate, whether it's on the field, off the field, on the court, it's always easier to do something with a team than by yourself.
What made her stand by you even when you came out? Because there's a huge risk bringing someone like your story, not you, but your
Yeah.
behavior into, obviously she had a child or children at the
Yeah, she
time.
had 3. Yeah, she had 3 of them.
Okay, so she's had 3.
Sure.
You finally get out and, of course, you're hoping to change your entire life. And she's looking at it going, okay, well, is this going to be a cliche, he's going to fall off the wagon type of sort of scenario, right? So what made her take that leap of faith in you?
She says the kids. She says that the way that the kids responded to me when I first met them, it was good for them to have somebody there. And she knew I was a good guy. Our first date, I gave her my indictment to read. Most of the times they give her flowers or something else. I gave her my indictment to read. So she knew who I was. And she said, you know what? People make mistakes. And that's when I knew too also that she was very real there. She wasn't going to run from the situation. It was just a hard time because I had to put myself in prison. So we had to pause, right? To be honest with you, if you talk to her now, she said our first 2 years of marriage, that's the hardest part of it all, right? Because now you combine the families and the different support groups that we had, and then we're trying to build our family. And so that was hard. Plus she said, Chad, you changed. Well, I was supposed to change, right? Remember, I was this guy before. I don't think that she would think that, not drinking and doing these different things. When my probation officer came over at 3:00 in the morning and had to take a look at the house and disrupt her family, she doesn't like anyone bothering the kids. So here's my probation officer at 3:00 in the morning, has to do a house check. And she's like, fuck this. I didn't put myself here. What does this chick come in here? I couldn't buy anything over $500 without having an acceptance from my probation officer. She had to make sure that she accepted all. And Jackie's like, we wanted to buy a new couch. Couldn't do that because my probation officer denied it all. So those first 2 years of marriage were the struggle of it all too. But when you can get through some of those struggles, I always use it. It's called struggling in the right direction. Every day is going to be a struggle, relationships, business partners. I mean, we work together, we live together, we do everything together. But we struggle together in the right direction. And that's what it's all about, is being there. If I'm falling down, then she picks me up. If she's falling down, then I get to pick her up. And that's what it was all about. So I think she saw the comfort in the kids, and she saw the true person that I was, It was just up to me to be able to make that change and to make sure that I make that change every day. And if I listen to her, I talk to her now, I think she says she falls more in love with me every day because I don't stop. I keep moving.
Wow. So many directions I could go there, Ryan, cut me off if you want, but how have you handled it since getting out? I mean, you've got, the movies and the TV shows probably don't accurately portray this, but do the people in your life from the past try and come back around and, come on now, Chad, let's go, let's get back to the old days, right? All this sort of stuff, right? And it's, it's probably cliche, but is that what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. When I got out, I had a small circle, and it was, again, I didn't want to put myself in jeopardy. So I eliminated those bad people, right? And I changed my environment, and that's what it was about. There's been many times, there's been many times where, you could say, fuck this, and you could turn back around and go do it all. But I never lost my sight. I've stayed focused on what I wanted to do. My former employees, I knew I could do more. So I went out and had a different job interview. I was going to work for a Dynasplit, try to do medical sales stuff, right? So I was going to try to even change my career, get into medical sales. I always loved sales, obviously selling drugs or selling fitness or selling health. I love to peddle things. And so I thought I could peddle medical devices. I thought I could sell some splints and all that. Unfortunately, I got turned down because of my felony conviction. I passed every interview. I did everything until they said, we got to run a background check. So again, it's in my hands. My life is in my hands, just like anybody else's life. It's choices. Either I can choose to just sit there and let this shit happen to me, or I'm going to choose to make a change on it. And that's what I've done is I've chosen to stay away from those people. I've got a lot of my friends, when my book came out, a lot of my high school friends have read this book, and it did come by for my book signing, are very pleased at the way that my life has been changed. And this life is so much simpler than the past life. Trying to lose weight and going up and down and relapsing through diet, trying to exercise and then falling off and then trying to get back on track, being training for a sport and not putting in your full effort. That shit's hard. That shit's hard. When you do the right stuff every day, life is very simple. And for me, I do a lot of stuff. I'm always on the move. I'm always gaining. I'm always getting better. But it's because it's simple. It's efficient. There's no falling backwards. My floor is a lot higher. People want to raise the ceiling, but I raise the floor. So if I ever do fall down, I ain't falling that far, right? I can always keep moving up. So again, it's just about structuring everything, and that's about having a plan.
Have you
Great.
been able to stay
Let's
off
talk
of everything?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
Ryan, go ahead, mate.
we just talked about it now. Yeah, it's been almost 17 years. Yep. Yeah, I haven't smoked crack in shit 20 years plus. And I tell everybody the reason why is because I love it. I can't. Right. I don't believe in addictions. I do not believe in addictions. Right. And so I've done a lot of counseling classes, and I know there's a lot of therapists that are out there that don't like when I say this, but I do not believe in addictions because I've tried everything. Right. I've done everything. And what happens is that, and I've seen people relapse. I was in prison with the head for AA. He got an automatic appeal, so he got released. And there's a driver that takes him to the bus stop when they get released. The driver's a convicted felon, or he's an inmate as well. So he's on an honor code to come back. My buddy happened to have that job. And when this guy got released, he had to take him to Lordsburg, New Mexico, to the Greyhound bus station where they're going to put him on there. Long story short, unfortunately, the bus station was closed down. So they take him to a hotel for the night. The feds pay for all this. It's part of your release. On the way to the hotel, the head of AA, who's been in there for 14 years, said, "Hey, stop and let's get a 30-pack of beer real quick." Right? This is because he had an opportunity. And so I've seen this before. When I got out, I had to go to one counseling class. And this guy told us, he says, "You're not going to hear me use the word addict in here. I am not going to tell you you're an alcoholic, you're a drug addict. I had a girl that sold her kid for sex and so she could go gamble. He's not going to tell you you're a gambling addict." He says, "Y'all are in here for making bad choices." And that's what it's all about. He said, when you learn to make the right choices, that's when your life is going to change. And I thought about it, that it really hit me home, and I use that every day of my life right now. Because again, we're not addicted to things. I don't know anybody that's addicted to running in front of cars. I don't know anybody that's addicted to putting their hand on a hot stove, right? It's these simple things that there's really the choices versus consequences aren't really weighed. But when you make a look at these choices and you see that there's always a little consequence, one way or the other, you'll start making the right choice. So I don't like to use the word addiction. I like to use the word choices. It's either yes or no. Do you want to get better? Or do you not want to get better? It's powerful, but it takes a lot of
Yeah.
self-pride.
Yeah, it makes sense. Let's talk
I
about
can't,
the
so,
book a little bit. I
I
know
can't help
we
nobody that
mentioned
does.
it before. Yeah, what was the story behind writing the book, and tell us a little bit about that. Where did that come about?
Yes. So obviously, like I said, I had a very active childhood and my adulthood. I got out. I went to go open up Move, and one of my clients, one of my ending clients at Rehab Plus, she said, "You need to write a book." And she didn't even know my personal side. She just knew everything that was on exercise and how I could help people feel better inside the gym. She was an older, maybe 70-year-old lady that had a frozen shoulder, and we were doing all of her shoulder rehab, right? And it was just about pushing yourself. They are painful, but you have to take it every day and you have to stretch a little bit more, try to continue to get your rate. And so I was just, I got a lot of cliches. I got a lot of analogies that I use. So I sat down with this lady. Her name was Laura Bush. She was with Peacock Proud Press. She was a publisher. My wife and we sat down with her. I gave her a little bit of my story. Now, at this point in time, I did tell her about me being incarcerated and having to go through a little bit of trials and tribulations in my life. We left the meeting. Jackie, my wife, she even kind of talked about some of her upbringing and how we met and the reason for us being together. And the lady left crying. She had some tears in her eyes. She said, "This is a great story." The only problem opening up a business, I had a certain amount of money that was allocated to doing this. And this book was going to take a chunk of that change out of there. I couldn't do it. Right. So I needed that money to put into Move. So we opened up Move. Last year, I turned 50. So I think it was February of last year, my wife contacted Laura and said, "Hey, I want to give Chad this gift of writing his book for his 50th birthday." It's
Mhm.
perfect because it's the gift that keeps giving, right? And so I jumped on it. I was excited. I've never done a book before. I've never written a book before. I opened up my story in 2021. It was called Make the Difference podcast. Was the first time my story ever came out about getting in trouble. So it's even still there, called Make the Difference. I mentioned it. It was an old buddy of mine that I knew since third grade. He said, tell your story. Right? People need to hear your story. So when I did tell that on that podcast, it gave me more motivation and hope to do this book. So I wanted to put it all in pen and paper. It's going to be exposed. I'm going to be vulnerable, right? I'm going to write all of the telltale stuff, but it wasn't just about my story. It was about the blueprint of my transformation, that where I could help others. So I spent 18 months writing it. It was released last month, October 28th on Amazon. So it got a bestseller for the first 2 weeks. It got hottest new release for the first 2 weeks. So it was great to see it make a lot of impact. I've got a lot of reviews coming in. I've got a lot of feedback coming in. And it's about the 10 codes to transform your life. All outcome based because I've done it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely link the book in the show notes here so folks can pick up a copy and grab one on their own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's always good to hear from someone that's been through a lot of different stuff. Because I think quite often we hear a testimony or we see something and say, oh, yeah, 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 but they didn't have, or they weren't going through what and then you come across someone like you. It's like, all right, well, listen, what part do you want to hear, right? You want a part, where I was probably growing up and getting into the wrong circles, or the part where I, got into the mental space to think that I could get away with what I was doing, or is it okay, I was in this incarceration and, my relationship fell apart, so now I'm alone, right? You could have easily spun any of those moments into a downward spiral and said, to hell with it, this is too hard, let me get my fix, right? That dopamine fix, which Ryan and I have talked about at length, and we're working so hard in our own lives and trying to help others realize that you don't have to keep doing that. But I think we've been labeled, not we in this chat or podcast, but as humans, we've been labeled as addicts, or, people that, hey, you'll always be an alcoholic. Isn't that what they say? You're always an alcoholic,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
think, Ryan, you've talked a little bit about that too, right? Well, they probably say you're always an alcoholic. It's like, but are you? Or do you have to be? Or, where does this term come from? I think we become labeled, and our words have power. I've been looking into that recently, and our words have a lot of power. So if you speak like, probably you had these experts telling you, I'm not going to call you an addict. That's probably a very interesting way to look at it, because I don't think many experts are probably calling their people something other than that, right? Am I right in that?
Yeah. They're going to call you. They're going to call you an addict because they know you're going to relapse because you're never in control of yourself. Right? There's
And
a
so
disease. There's a
you're almost
disease inside you, and that disease is taking over. No. You have to take over that disease. And how do I do that? It's by your choice. And so when you eliminate the unknown out there, right now, that goes back in. And I know and again, I know there's chemical imbalances, and we go into psychiatry and we go into different things. I understand that. But for somebody that's able to, and that's coherent enough, and that's at that opportunity or that stage in their life where they want to make that, it all boils back down to choices. And the choice is your self-identity. Become who you want to become, right? Somebody will tell you that you're an alcoholic. That's just a label. Like you said, that's what they're telling you. Are you going to believe them, or are you going to believe yourself? Right? And tell yourself that you're not that, that you're a crack addict, you're a crackhead. I'm not a crackhead. I just like to smoke crack to see what it was all about. Shit, I had a good time doing it. Now let's move on. But those are situations, those are the choices. And so, again, writing this book, when we've looked for all the self-help, I've gone to these classes or I've talked to experts like we've talked about. There's only one person that you haven't talked to, and that's yourself.
Mm.
And when you're in incarceration, I always go to silence. You have to have silence. In this world nowadays, we don't have much silence out there. We have headphones on, we have AirPods in, radio up, we got somebody chatting in our ear, but you have to have silence. And when you have silence, you're either listening to the inner critic or you're listening to the inner coach, right? And you have to listen to the inner coach. Take the critic out of there. That's not who you are. That's the pessimistic attitude. Be optimistic about who you want to be, what you can control, which is yourself, and then become an optimistic person.
That's so powerful. I've got a couple of things that I've come across recently that talk about when you're really struggling to make a decision, or if you've got something that you don't know how to solve, take 30 to 60 minutes into a space that's got no distractions, no music, no headphones, no people walking past in your line of sight, no nothing, right? And that your own subconscious or divine appointment power, whatever you want to call it, right? These thoughts and ideas will eventually, during that 30 to 60-minute window, start to hit you, and your brain just becomes this snowball of ideas and thoughts. And it's funny you'd bring that up today to kind of confirm some of the research I've been doing lately to make sure that I do have that spare time every single day just for myself and listen to it, because I've got two little kids, and I think that quite often we catch ourselves telling those children something that if they hear it often enough, they believe it. And so as an adult, if you get told you're an addict, you're an addict, you're an addict, or whatever it is, you're an alcoholic, you're
Hmm.
an alcoholic, right? Or you're addicted to porn, you're addicted to porn, right? If you get told over and over and over enough, then you start to believe that self-taught thought that, well, I am, and there's nothing I can do about it, versus praising the people around us. And we've all done it as trainers, right? Hey, you got this. You can do this. We're going to be okay. You're strong enough, right? And so we do it in our careers, but do we do it to our spouses? Do we do it to our children? And then finally, do we actually do it to ourselves? Do we tell ourselves, hey, I'm okay. I'm good enough. I can do this. And I think that 30 to 60-minute window that you're talking about every day should be spent putting aside the noise. Like,
Yeah.
take the bloody headphones out, get the TV down, get away from all the radiation and noises and frequencies that are trying to get in there and tell you that you are an addict and that you're stuck there, and actually listen to yourself. Say, hey, you know what? I am good enough. I'm strong enough. I'm going to make it out of this. And so it's just been amazing as I'm sitting here getting chills over and over and over again at your testimony here. So thank you for sharing that, because I'm inspired to be a better husband, to be a better dad, but ultimately to take care of myself better and speak that holy power into my life, so that I speak it into others that I get blessed to come into contact with. So thank you, Chad, for sharing that.
Well, a lot of times, us coaches, we do so much to help others, but at the same time, when you get to help yourself, and fortunately or unfortunately, I got a time of being alone, and that was when I was incarcerated. And everything that we try to preach daily, I was able to do. But again, that was because I took my own training manual. I was able to redefine it. I was able to, even like I said, when I was in prison, when I was doing some training, I could help people train while they were inside there. I was still helping people being a personal trainer inside prison. But really, the way I look at it now is that I was learning how to run my own business again inside there, right? Because I was training people inside there. So again, it was teaching me how to run a business, right? How do I gain more clients? How do I recruit more people? And it was, again, there's certain things, but you have to be cognizant enough to see these messages when they're out there and then utilize them when we come out. And so, with everything that we do, it starts with yourself. It really does. And one of the greatest things is to know thyself. And I talk, that's why chapter 1 of my book is on self-identity. And when we talk about self-identity, and I think this is kind of what we're just talking about right now, is that there's a couple of different things. Either it's what people told us, alcoholic, drug addict, porn addict, whatever, and we start to believe those, or is it your values and your beliefs? I ask a lot of people, tell me a little something about yourself. Matter of fact, most of my clients, when they first come in, I say, tell me a little something about yourself. And a lot of people can't answer that because A, they don't want to, B, they don't know, or C, they're embarrassed to. Right. And so for me, when I tell people, they say, tell me about yourself. I tell them I'm a 51-year-old husband, newly grandfather, convicted felon. I got 60 years eyes. I've been in prison for 28 months and 30, sentenced to 30 months. That's really who I was. That's who I am. It's my physical stuff. But my self-identity is my beliefs and my values. I'm very optimistic. I'm the guy that's going to be behind you all the way to support you through good and bad, because I've been there for myself to do that. I'm going to get you from point A to point Z because I believe in you. Right. And so, again, a lot of your values are also your beliefs, but they have to match who you are physically. Right. And when those two match up, everything's in alignment, and there's not one thing you can't do.
I love it, Chad. I'm gonna have to get a copy of that book, but I know it's
It's
not gonna
good.
come directly from your house, so I'm gonna actually. I've just had this thought of all these guests and those that have had books and stories. I'm actually gonna go out of my way now to collect all these books, and I'm gonna send them to all my guests, and I'm gonna have you guys write in them. I'm gonna have a special shelf on my library of all the guests and testimonies, and a handwritten note in the front cover for me. So we're gonna have to
Yep.
get into touch on the outside to be able to do that.
And even something like what you said, so handwritten on the inside of the cover. As now an author, which again, details, 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 right? We as trainers, we always talk about details. There's a certain page inside a book that you're supposed to sign your autograph on. It's not the front inside cover, and it's not the front page either. It's like the fourth page into the book called the title page. I never knew that before I wrote a book, but my publisher, she's like, now when you do your book signings and you have all this, it's details. There's a certain page that they have to, because that's how they can tell now if it's authentic or if it actually came from that person, or if it was just somebody that signed a book saying that they were an author. So when you do look for it, when you open it up, if it's not on the front, don't say this guy screwed me over and didn't leave me a signature. It might be a couple pages back.
I love it. Well, we'll stay in touch outside of this. I'm going to get that book and get it to you for a hand-signed copy. And I'm going to build a library because, it seems like every time we have a guest on the show, I walk away from these just feeling absolutely empowered. And it's almost like the weeks prior to the episode, all of these things I've been wrestling with or going through, and then I have the guest on, and it's almost like another divine appointment for me where I'm hearing about everything I've been searching and researching and praying about, and bam, it just comes out of the mouth of the guest. So thank you for being that voice to me this week.
And, for all the kids that are out there listening and everything else too, the guys, don't ever let your past determine your future. And that's one of the biggest things I always go by. Don't ever let your past determine your future. Have a plan. The reason why it's called Move is because my paralyzed guys, it wasn't about getting stronger. It wasn't about getting stretched. It was just about moving, right? And I think that's what life's about. It's just about moving. He or she that moves the farthest. Obviously, incarceration is going to take you to where you're not moving, unless you choose to, still inside there. But at the end of the day, I got a 91-year-old gentleman. He was the Intel CEO of Honeywell. Of Honeywell. He's 91 years old. He still walks like 10,000, 12,000 steps a day. I'm never going to be able to catch the guy, right? It's about moving. It's about moving. So he or she who moves the farthest, and again, that's where the mind over virtual everything comes in. Keep your mind right and be the best person that you can be.
I love it,
Good
Chad. Thanks
stuff.
so much for being on.
Yep. Be business owner, whatever you want to do, my deal. The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit, because the floor is so close to you. Just keep raising the floor and you'll be able to reach your ceiling.
I love that. I'm going to steal that for sure. That's pretty much how I've developed my career, stealing great anecdotes and stories from everyone. So thank you for being part of my future.
That's what us good coaches do. We learn from everybody. Good coaches learn from everybody.
Awesome. Ryan, can you make sure all this stuff gets put in there? I'm hopeless at that stuff.
Yep. Chad, where can folks find you? Are
Yep.
you on social media?
Yeah, so we have social media. Obviously, moveperformance.com is one of our websites. Mind Over Virtually Everything is another website that we have, which is some speaking stuff. As a matter of fact, you can order the book on the website too, or Amazon. So either which one of those two. And then on my social medias, I got Chad Dunn 22 for Instagram, Move Performance for Instagram, Twitter. Those are the handles. But feel free anytime. And also, anybody that wants to reach out to me if they want any questions, help me. I'm always available for everybody, no matter what. I never forget where I come from.
Love it.
Thanks so much for being on the show with us today, Chad.
No, thank you guys for having me. It was a great one. I love it.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. All right, guys out there, women and children and young and old, appreciate you. Stay strong. We'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.
Cheers.